Welcome to the Grand Atlantic Hotel, a 3-star hotel managed by Team 11.2. Let's go meet our team.
Good afternoon, my name is Miriam. I'm the pricing and marketing manager. First of all, I would like to introduce you to our positioning and pricing strategy. As we were not able to capture higher occupancy by lowering prices as seen from the owner's briefing, we chose to try a completely new strategy. After having worked 1 quarter in a similar hotel with similar competition, we chose to go with the same strategy, market skimming. This would mean achieving an ARI and RGA above the baseline with an MRI below. We wish to provide high quality to justify the high prices. The main target markets we wanted to focus on were large groups, bar standard, contracted, and maybe also guaranteed. Thanks to last year's guest survey, we know that corporate and business travels will be easiest to satisfy.
My name is David and I am a revenue management assistant. When we took over the management of the full-service Grand Atlantic Hotel, we knew that our focus would be to improve the revenue management of the rooms. It is worth mentioning that the hotel offers 2,000 square meters of conference and event space in flexible configuration.
My name is Constantin and I'm the revenue manager of the Grand Atlantic Hotel. My major duty is to decide on the incoming RFPs, which is of huge importance to our hotel since we are focusing on the target segment large groups.
As we knew from the owner's briefing, 12 companies were expected to move into the area this year, as well as more airlines. Therefore, we focused on contracted and guaranteed segments as there was an expected increase in demand. We focused also on large groups because the Hotel Association Outlook mentioned the growing number of RFPs, corporate meetings, and non-resident events. When I first took over the marketing, I had forgotten to base my expenses on a maximum of 6% of the monthly room revenues. And we spent an average of 10% during that quarter. Another mistake during Q1 was to invest in many channels instead of only focusing on the ones that most impact our customers. Due to the Hotel Association's Outlook mentioning that regional travel and tourism marketing initiatives were not expected to impact the leisure market until the Q2, we decided not to invest into PR advertising until Q2. At the end of Q1, we increased weekday advertising for transients as we saw a lower occupancy than for weekends. This resulted in an increase of 0.15% in transient weekday bookings. The marketing was an overall success as we received many positive guest comments.
We refurbished our guest rooms for our bar startup segment. The decision was also based on the fact that during the higher season, we didn't want our rooms to be out of order. Lobby and front desk were also refurbished. Finally, associate facilities were refurbished in order to start the quadrant with a committed and motivated work staff. We added express check-in, express check-out in order to increase our value as a hotel and potentially decrease the time between the customers during the high season. As our strategy is to focus on large groups, at the end of the first quadrant, we refurbished the meeting rooms in order to meet their needs and increase the value of the hotel.
We decided to focus on large group, contracted, and bar standard in order to have a good customer mix. A hotel needs to focus on various segments so as to optimize occupancy and revenue. We decided to increase prices upon taking over in accordance to our market skimming strategy. For initial pricing, we based ourselves on the gross price points and limits table we were given as background information. Our initial prices for the segments we targeted were well within the limit of the maximum rate strategy, being quite far from the absolute price limit. For the segments we did not want to attract, we initially put high prices, with rates being up to 50% more expensive than the target segments. This is due to the fact that we cannot close rates in the simulation, but with high prices, a similar effect can be achieved. When looking at the price value map, we can see our prices were in line with our strategy. However, we were not able to provide the quality we had hoped. Or rather, our customers may not have perceived us as being of high quality due to spending less in advertising than our competitors. At the end of Q1, we exited price parity in order to make up expenses incurred by distributors. This decision had an overall negative effect on all market indexes. However, we decided not to go back to rate parity in the hopes that the market would adapt to our changes.
For Q1, we initially fixed the trigger points as tentatives to see how our target markets would react to them. This resulted in a decrease of the market share of standard bar and large groups. This means that our trigger points might have been too high in this case. Our trigger points came twice into action, twice as a rate reduction.
As we realized to spend a maximum of 6% of our room revenue on marketing, we adjusted all expenses, cutting most of them by 50%. The big decrease in advertising did not go unnoticed. We completely ceased investing into wholesalers since we realized that our customers hardly booked through them. When we heard about 2 of our competitors accepting an RFP, we expected them to displace a certain amount of transient guests. Consequently, we especially increased marketing for transient guests while still maintaining an expense of maximum 6%. As we noticed that transient guests prefer to book through GDS and direct channels, we ceased investment into OTAs by the end of the quarter. We further increased weekday advertising for the transient guests in the hopes to capture even more of the market share. Unfortunately, this was not the case. However, we understand that marketing has only a partial impact, competition and pricing playing important roles as well. For discount segments, we also invested more into weekday advertising as we received more bookings during weekends.
In Quadrant 2, we added additional services for our guests as they were asking for them through social media. We included concierge and foreign exchange. This addition aimed in the increase of our value as a hotel and also to be in line with our market scheming strategy. Additionally, we saw that our competitors already had those extra services, so we wanted to be in the same place and offer even better quality if we wanted to compete. Finally, we started constructing our fitness center as it was implemented by only one hotel already. We refurbished parking grounds, pool and guest room premium in order to prepare our rooms for the high season in Quadrant 3. The implementation of an environmental program was made in order to gain competitive advantage as a hotel, as not many of other hotels had it. Additionally, we renovated our social facilities in order to further increase our employees' motivation.
As we saw from the value price mapping, our hotel still needed improvement in quality in order to perform according to our strategy and also to perform competitively. As we kept to our market scheming strategy, we did not lower prices during the second quarter. We thought this would mean a sacrifice in our initial strategy. As can be seen from the market index study, this was an unwise decision. We should have made a sacrifice in price in order to capture more market share and thus improve in our RGI.
For quarter 2, we made a mistake not noticing that trigger points were negatively influencing our market share, therefore the trigger points were increased once again. This had a negative impact on our RevPAR, notably. Our trigger points came twice into action in this case, and once again twice as rate reductions.
Coming on to the RFP of May, we were then in low season, so we took the approach of simply taking the bar standard rate, from which we have deducted the variable cost per occupied room, which gave us a minimum available rate of 177. However, after employing the displacement model and taking the total ADR of the previous month, it was found that we could have offered a minimum available rate of 136.
For the third quarter, we knew we would be signing the new contracts. Therefore, we invested more into the discounted segments to attract our focused segment of contracted guests. As we managed to get the RFP in July, we ceased marketing expenses for groups on weekends for that month. To attract premium guests in order to balance out the low rate we offered to the group, we invested more heavily in weekend spendings for transient guests. As usual, we kept our focus on the direct and GDS marketing. At the end of the high season, we decided to invest into OTA advertising for transient guests, as we still received guest complaints of being not visible enough. We did this in the hopes to appease them. Furthermore, the increase in overall profit allowed us to spend a higher amount of money in advertising.
In Quadrant 3, we did not refurbish any of our rooms as it was not worth sacrificing potential occupancy during the high season. For our facilities, we included a valet parking and retail shop, aiming to be mostly used during the high season by our guests. As aforementioned, we were again behind the competition on those facilities and services as our revenues were not high enough.
As we accepted the RFP in July for a very low price, there was no surprise to see our ARI and RGI drop during that month. Thankfully, we were able to somewhat recover in the following months. We did not adjust prices as we were in high season and believed our prices to be accurate now. Unfortunately, this was a misconception again, and even though demand was higher, we were still not able to greatly improve occupancy and RGI. By the end of the third quarter, we were no longer located at the high price end, but we had slightly improved in our quality offering.
For quarter 3, we tried to counterbalance our RFP by playing with the trigger points, increasing them considerably into rate increase, which released to a big drop in reservations, and this was clearly not enough to balance out the large group arrival. Market share for large group went through the roof, but the 3 others went considerably down. Our trigger point here came into action as rate increased just once.
As we were approaching our high season, we had an RFP concerning July. As we've learned from our mistakes of the last RFP, we were making use of the displacement model from the right beginning. Nonetheless, our PMS considered the given dates as weekdays and weekends, while in fact only weekends were concerned. We thereby ended up with a rate of $57. Since we were struggling to enhance our occupancy despite a higher market demand, we were desperate to get the group, and therefore we offered an even lower rate, namely $50. This was not a very wise decision because our increase in the occupancy could not be compensated by a drastic drop in ADR, which then resulted in a decreased RevPAR. Now, in the end of the accounting year, we adapted our PMS, and hence now it's only taking into account the weekends, where it now gives us a minimum available rate of $90.
For quarter 4, having exited the high season, we now started to invest more money into weekend advertising as occupancy dropped more drastically than for weekdays. Furthermore, as we kept receiving guest complaints, we decided to try even more advertising through OTAs. We did this being aware of the fact that OTAs ask a higher commission fee than GDS. At the end of the year, as our replacement fund did not offer enough money to invest into new facilities and services, we decided to use more money in the advertising department. However, we did not invest like crazy, keeping in mind the long-term goals.
After the high season in Quadrant 4, we were able to refurbish again our rooms as the occupancy was lower and not all rooms would be occupied. Additionally, we refurbished parking and environmental program, which were expected to drop below satisfactory during the next month.
Based on the background information, we knew that the occupancy would drop by 15% for weekdays and 23% during weekends as the high season was over. As a result, together with the fact that we were always below the baseline for RGI, we concluded that we should consider dropping our prices. We did not wish to drop them as much as the expected drop in occupancy, but decreased them by 10% for weekdays and 15% for weekends for our main target segment. For the other segments, we decided to drop prices by smaller percentages, namely 5% and 8% respectively. As we can see from the market index study, the rather drastic drop in price resulted in a peak in occupancy. However, the RevPAR index remained almost constant. We decided that dropping the prices this drastically, even though it was no longer high season, was not a very smart move. It was for us nonetheless interesting to see the impact of our decision. Moreover, we thought the competition would most likely drop room rates as well, which however was only the case for 2 out of our 8 competitors.
We had another RFP to balance out. We were less aggressive with the trigger points and resulted to a smaller drop. Our trigger points came twice into action, 1 increase and 1 decrease.
In the last quarter of the year, we received an RFP for the month November. Unfortunately, the same mistake occurred as in July. Due to that, we have calculated our minimum available rate considering weekdays and weekends, while in fact only weekdays were concerned. As a result of that, our calculations displayed that we would not displace any transients, so we only ended up with the variable cost of $23. Since that seemed rather low, and we've already done a mistake of offering a too low rate as an RFP, we have offered 62. However, now we have commuted the MAR again, and we ended up with an offer of $139. If we would have used that rate instead, we wouldn't have repeated the mistake of sacrificing our ADR just for the sake of having an increase in the occupancy.
Overall, we kept a maximum 6% budget allocated to our department after realizing our mistake in March. However, for the future, we still need to do more research in how to reach our target customers. We assume the competition did not follow the suggestion to spend a maximum of 6% of revenue on marketing. Thus, their marketing had a greater impact on market share. Our efforts to better attract guests will need to be done in collaboration with the pricing department, as only by adjusting the prices to the demand of our targeted segments, we will be able to attract more guests.
We will have to focus on how our competition is competing and manage to offer the same or even higher quality of value. However, the amount spent on facilities and services is based on the monthly revenue earned. More marketing effort could be done to promote our new facilities to attract more guests. Additionally, during the next year, we should focus as well on implementing facilities that are aligned with our target segments.
We were able to mainly attract our 4 target segments, especially bar standard and large groups. After having incurred a loss in the first month, we were able to make a net profit thereafter. The size of the profit also depicted the seasonality. The aim was to generate an annual GOP in excess of 25%, which we beat. Our annual GOP was 36.28%. However, we did not achieve the first 2 goals of reaching a level of guest satisfaction equal to or higher than our competitors, and to achieve an above fair market room share. We would set ourselves a short-term goal to first raise customer satisfaction and to work towards gaining an above fair market room share. In the long term, we would aim for continued excellence, generating loyalty amongst guests and seeing more substantial increase in net profit.